had people express some interest in my leg profiling jig that I used in the hexagonal table build. This is an upper template jig. I went to this jig for two reasons. First, my guide bearing is an adjustable guide bearing. It's an Eigner curved machining guide, and it really is intended for use only above the top of a shaper cutter. You could use it below, but it's very restrictive on adjustments. Another reason to use the upper template on this particular project was my leg had a mitered joint. And because of that, I needed some adjustability on this jig such that that miter point meets at the cutting point. And this jig, I've got it's held in place by two 1/4 20 machine screws going into threaded inserts and the stop blocks on either end. All I have to do is loosen that, and I can adjust that template such that I can make that corner of where the miter tip point is just as perfect as I can get it. This jig has access points to actuate and release the clamps, and the opposite end of the jig is cut long such that the template actually contacts the guide bearing before the cutter head actually starts cutting, and that's just what I do for safety reasons. So let me remove this template. And that's the range of adjustment that I have on this template. I could have gone larger if I needed more adjustment, but that was not necessary. There are alternatives if you did not want to oversize that hole. You could shim your leg out or cut your leg just a little shorter to move it up and down in order to get rid of any end grain showing on the top or face of the leg. The fence system is a piece of poplar. I used two different threaded inserts in this project. Both of these are easy lock. One is a flanged and one is an unflanged. The coarseness and design of these threads are they're really intended for use in particle board, which it actually holds better in particle board than it does in poplar. And anyway, that's what I had on hand, so that's what I used. I used the unflanged version in the end stops, and I used the flanged versions for the clamp system. Here's an offcut from one of the legs, and it is clamped in position with just minimal torque on these clamps. And these are just ash. I think they're about 5/16 of an inch thick, or whatever that relates to metric wise. It doesn't really matter. You'll note that I had a hole here that I ended up moving this clamp over. The reason I did that is because I had a burr in the thread or some debris in the thread, and it actually twisted that threaded insert in the hole, so I couldn't clamp. So I could have either epoxied that into place or just move it, and it was just easier to move the thing. And that's what the purpose of this tape is on the top, so that I don't stick my screwdriver in the hole where there's nothing there. To clamp and unclamp this system, it doesn't take a whole lot, quarter to half a turn, and what's there where I can't move it is now all of a sudden easily removed. I have some self-stick sandpaper. This is 120 grit. I've put it on the base, which is 3/4 inch ply, and I've also put it on the underside of the ash clamps. These clamps are spring loaded, and what the spring loading does, let's get that out of the way now, is that it does two things. First, it allows you to easily insert the leg by pushing that clamp up, so it makes it easier to get a new blank leg installed in your jig, but it also prevents rotation of these pieces. So the way I did that, I just bored a shallow counter bore size of the spring and to retain the spring so it doesn't go flying out, and just spring load the clamp that way. There's not a whole lot more to this jig. There's no glue, only screws and threaded inserts. So to clamp this, you just put your leg in place, tighten that down slightly, do not over torque it, and there's enough flex in this ash such that it securely clamps that workpiece in place. I don't think there's much else to cover on this jig. It worked out pretty well. I will note that you'll note that this corner is cut off the end of the jig. Initially that was square, and when I did my dry run I found that corner was interfering with my hood, dust collection hood, and so I ended up cutting that off, and I was able to get around. So anyway, that's my shaper leg profiling jig. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.